What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Marinoni Time. I'm Alex Marinoni, and in today's episode, there's going to be two episodes for one. In this one, I'm going to break down the New York Jets 2020 NFL schedule, and then in the next episode, which will be posted right after this, I will do the same for the New York Giants. But for the New York Jets, they're coming off of a 7-9 season where they had one of the easiest schedules in the NFL last year. I believe it was the second easiest. Altogether, it was tied for the second easiest, but as far as winning percentage from the year before goes, this year they are looking at the second hardest schedule, just behind the Patriots. The average win percentage, or the win percentage of their opponents from last season was, I believe, at .531. So definitely a tough road to go against. They'll be going against the AFC West and the NFC West, which adds difficulty considering that's two conferences in the West Coast that they're going to have to travel to. So it's at least 4 games in West Coast time, which definitely makes things difficult. But let's take a look here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through each game, pretty much circle the games that are must-wins that they have to get if they want to be a playoff team, and some of the games that you should probably chalk up as a loss and just be happy that they win. So without further ado, we'll start here in Week 1, where they will again get the Buffalo Bills, except this time on the road. No surprise that they start with an AFC East opponent, and it's the Bills for, I believe that's the third straight year. I know they did it last year. Last year, it was Week 1 and Week 17. This year, they will be playing the Bills Week 1 and Week 7. So they're getting the Bills out of the way in the first half of the season, which I thought was very interesting. And another thing that I thought was interesting before I go through each team was the Dolphins matchup. They will be playing the Dolphins on Week 10, and then they'll have a bye week, Week 11, and then playing the Dolphins again Week 12. And I think they did something similar to that last year. I don't think it was a bye week, but I think they went to Miami, played a game at home, and then hosted Miami, if I'm not mistaken. It was something, or it was very close, within 4 weeks at very least. So the fact that they're playing them 2 weeks in a row, I mean, talk about an advantage there. I didn't look at the Dolphins' schedule, so I don't know if they have a game in between, but if they do, that's tough for the Dolphins, especially because the Jets are playing them at Miami the first time. So they'll play them in Miami, come home, take the break, review everything, and then host them. So if Miami has a game that Week 11, that's definitely an advantage for the Jets there. But let's start here, Week 1. You have the Jets and the Bills. The Jets are at the Bills. What looks like right now a 1 o'clock game on CBS. With the way things are going in New England, I mean, of course it's Bill Belichick, so you can't just say the Patriots are done with Brady gone, Gronk gone, and losing some other pieces. But there could be a changing of the guard in the AFC East, and we can actually say that with meaning. I mean, for the last 20 years, it's been who's going to finish second. This could be the time. And as of right now, the two quarterbacks that lead this division are going to face off. And for the sake of Bills fans and definitely for the sake of Jets fans, they're hoping that this is a premium rivalry in this division, just like the Jim Kelly, Dan Marino days. So obviously, Jets don't have one of those quarterbacks, but just where it was somebody else. I mean, if you think about it, it's very interesting knowing that the Bills have their quarterback situations figured out. The Jets believe they have their quarterback situation figured out. The Dolphins just drafted Tua, so obviously he has those injury issues, but they feel like their franchise quarterback is on the roster, and the New England Patriots are strutting out either Brian Hoyer or Jarrett Stidham. So the last time the AFC East had a situation where the 3 other teams that weren't New England had their quarterback situation corrected, and the Patriots were the ones with a question mark, I don't even know. I definitely wasn't alive. I'm thinking, like I said, the Marino and Jim Kelly days, maybe Ken O'Brien was on the team too with the Jets. I believe he was, so you have those 3. I mean, the Colts were around then too, but at least from those 3 standpoint, I don't honestly know before Bledsoe the order of the Patriot quarterbacks at that time. So that's the last time where New England was unsure about what they were doing quarterback-wise, and the other teams had a clue. So very interesting times, and like I said, in this Week 1 matchup, it's going to be Darnold and Allen, 2 friends, which is pretty ironic with the way rivalries are nowadays, that they're good buddies rather than hating each other. But they'll square off Week 1. Last year's Week 1 was as disappointing as of a week as you can expect from the Jets, but lost in just such the Jets way. Jets had a 16-0 lead, for those that don't remember, and then late in the third and the fourth quarter, the Bills rally off 17 unanswered points. Basically, when C.J. Mosley got hurt in the game, the Bills just pretty much took off. I guess they got their guy out of the way and scored 17 unanswered. Jets couldn't do anything, and that was pretty much how the season went. So, Jets looking for redemption in Buffalo. They won last year in Buffalo on the last week of the season. 13-6, but that game was, the Jets had their starters out. They were playing to win. It was weird weather, but Bills were not. They had the playoffs locked up and their seed locked up to go to Houston, so there was nothing to gain from playing that game with their starters, so they benched their guys. So the fact that the Jets won by 7 is kind of discouraging, but win's a win. So they'll have that game week 1. Should be a good matchup. The Bills, I think, are the favorites right now for the AFC East to win the division. So this is a good statement game for both sides, but mainly for the Jets, because you have to know that the way the Bills played last year and the way they played New England both times last year, I'm convinced that first matchup, if Allen doesn't go down, the Bills have a chance to, or they had a chance to win the game, but should have won that game. So this is a team that is probably the favorites to win the AFC East. So if the Jets feel like there's an open door there, this is a game that they have to take. The Bills made some moves, brought in Stephon Diggs is probably the most notable one. Josh Norman too, which I'm not really big on. He looked like his career was kind of not at the same place it was when it was in Carolina in his time with Washington, but he could, between injuries and just being around losing like that, maybe something was sparked here in Buffalo. But this should be a good matchup, and I'm glad that the Jets are playing Buffalo week 1 in Buffalo, or week 2, like early in the season. Don't want to deal with that Buffalo weather. That's where Josh Allen's strong arm will take the advantage of, deep late in the season, the winds are blowing and everything, over Sam Darnold. Darnold's got a strong arm, not saying anything like that, but Josh Allen might have the strongest arm in the league and is probably built better playing in Wyoming and just built better for that kind of weather, and that would be a significant home field advantage. So playing them early week 1 in Buffalo, definitely advantage for the Jets there, or just to even things out, I guess I should say. But moving on to week 2, the Jets have a tough one. They will be hosting their home opener against the reigning NFC champion San Francisco 49ers. 49ers were, they had a 10-point lead on the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, where the Chiefs ended up coming back and doing what they did. Pretty magical stuff there. But 49ers are one of the most dangerous teams in the NFL, built so deep on both on the offense and the defense side of the ball. Not many moves in the offseason. There's not much you need to do with a 13-win team, and everybody's basically under contract. They did trade DeForest Buckner to the Colts and got back a first-round pick for him. So that a big loss, you could say, on the defensive line. Definitely helps in this game with the Jets. Jets overhauled their offensive line like we've mentioned in the past, but they still have a big ask with Dee Ford and Nick Bosa. That's the highlight of this game for me, is how Mekhi Becton, the Jets' first-round pick, handled Nick Bosa throughout this game. I'm sure Bosa will get him a couple times, but Becton is built to handle a guy like Bosa, and that's why you spend a first-round pick on him. So that's going to be the key matchup of this game. It's going to be a tough ask. You hope that the build-up of week 1 home opener will give the Jets a little bit of that emotional advantage, and 49ers, it's early in the season, so anything going across country, anything like that, I can't say anything like that with the 49ers. They've answered every call last year, no matter what the obstacle was. So they're definitely a team built to come on the East Coast and still play their game. So this is a game that the Jets are just going to have to, they're the number 2 rush defense in football last year. That's got to be a big part of this game, is stopping the run. You stop the run and you force Garoppolo to throw the ball 40 times in this game, you have a chance. So probably a game that if you're a person that goes win-loss to start the year, you probably mark this one as a loss, but just based off of talent of the roster. But a game that the Jets, if they want to be taken seriously, need to be in. Week 3, the Jets will be back on the road. They go against the Indianapolis Colts. In my opinion, the Colts are the best team in the AFC South, and in the last couple years, in the Andrew Luck years, and even last year, I thought this team had a pretty good roster. Even the year they, as far back as the AFC Championship loss to the Patriots, I thought they've pretty much kept a pretty steady roster outside of the offensive line. This year, I think they have their strongest team. They get Phillip Rivers from free agency. He's going to be their starting quarterback for at least a year until Eason is ready to possibly take over. It looks like they're done with Brissett. Brissett's still on the team, but as a backup. I thought Brissett did a fine job last year, especially considering all the injuries the team dealt with and his own injury. At one point, the team was 6-4, and then when they lost, when he went down, in I believe it was in Pittsburgh, a game they could have won, they ended up losing, and then losing the next week to Miami, and then the season sort of spiraled after that. But this is a team that is definitely, in my opinion, the favorites of the AFC South, like I said, and a team that I believe is a team that has the ability to make a deep playoff run. So a tough game early on for the Jets on the road, but probably a game that experts will mark as an L for the Jets, but a game that, again, they need to at least be in the game. They need to show that they can play with a team like Indianapolis. I mean, they did make a couple big offseason moves, bringing in outside of Rivers, bringing in Xavier Rhodes and DeForest Buckner, like I mentioned before. So that'll be a challenge for the team, but this is definitely a prove-it game. If you think you're a playoff team, this is a playoff team, definitely. So you're going to have to step up. Week 4, the Jets will be hosting the Denver Broncos on their first primetime game, Thursday night game. So it's a big deal that the Jets get that home Thursday night game. Definitely hate traveling, short week, especially for the Broncos. They have to come all the way across the country on a short week. That's a tough ask, especially with a young quarterback. Drew Lock took over last year in the last few weeks of the season, looked very good, 4-1 record. And it was a big reason for that. I mean, they had very inconsistent play out of Joe Flacco and Brandon Allen last year. When Locke came in, it gave them that extra element, a little bit of balance in that offense with Philip Lindsay. And this year, I think they're an even better team. Definitely helped out their quarterback in the draft, picking up Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler. So they're pairing those two with Cortland Sutton to give Locke just a big time weapons. Then you got Philip Lindsay, who's been very, very good. And they brought in Melvin Gordon. So that 1-2 punch of Lindsay and Gordon with those 3 receivers, adding Noah Fant, now all of a sudden their offense looks like it could be getting closer to their strength of that team, where it's been the defense since their Super Bowl win with Manning. And you still have to worry about Von Miller and everyone on that defense. They did lose Chris Harris this year to the Chargers, but they replaced him with A.J. Bouye. So the Broncos look like a team that's ready to be that wild card team. Maybe give the Chiefs a run for their money if something happens to the Chiefs, but the Broncos are definitely a team ready to take that step. So it's very fortunate the Jets get this Thursday night home game. This is a game that you circle and say you have to win. You have to take care of the Thursday night home game. You can't let a team on a short week come in and beat you. That's just, playoff teams don't do that, plain and simple. Week 5, the Jets will be hosting again, so advantage there, being able to stay home for that extended time to play the Arizona Cardinals. This is another team that I believe is ascending like the Broncos. I don't think they're at the level of the Broncos as far as their ceiling this season. I still think they're still another year or 2 away of reworking that roster before they can really make some real noise. But this is a team that can compete. And Kyler Murray is probably expecting to take that next step, especially with the acquisition of DeAndre Hopkins for basically nothing last year. David Johnson was not a part of that team really at all. And to flip him for the best wide receiver in the NFL is a joke, and in probably 99% of fantasy leagues would have been vetoed by the league or by the commissioner. So the fact that trade went through is kind of disgusting to think about. Normally it would make me happy because an NFC West team, as an AFC East Jets fan, I wouldn't care. I'm just glad that Hopkins is out of the conference, I guess, but the fact that the Jets have to play the NFC West this year makes it tough. But this is a team in the Cardinals, like I said, they've already come into life under Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury last year and took it to the Giants. They ran all over the Giants in that first half. So this is a team that won't be scared of coming in to go against the Jets. But this is another game, though, for the Jets. You have to circle, and you have to say it's a must-win. For a playoff team this year, this is a must-win. You can't – the game's probably going to be close, especially if Kyler Murray takes that next step. But they don't have enough defensively right now in Arizona that should make me believe that they should be able to stop this Jets offense. At this point. I'm not saying the Jets offense is among the top and explosive offenses in the league, but the Cardinals definitely don't have that defense that should scare anybody. So they're still another year or 2 away. This could be a good game, but this is a game the Jets need to circle. Week 6, the Jets will be going to the Chargers. This is one of the most annoying teams in the NFL. Impossible to bet unless you just have them cover every spread. They will do that. Last year they went 5-11, but their plus minus was only -8. Which for a 5-11 team is pretty crazy. That's something you see like in between 9-7 and 7-9 teams. Those the 2-8 like those. That's where that plus minus at -8 usually lies, not in a 5-11 team. And a large reason why they were 5-11 was because Phillip Rivers turned the ball over late in games last year with opportunities to win. Not to all his fault. There was a lot of times where the defense gave up late scores. Rivers is not a mobile guy, so when you have the ball inside your own 30 with no timeouts and a minute left, that's where, if you just put some pressure on a guy that can't move, he's just going to force stuff up. I mean, and at that point of Philip Rivers' career with the offensive line wasn't great, and Eckler was great, but then when Gordon came back, the running game kind of went down, which was weird. They just were just a mess last year. Had injuries on the defensive side of the ball. And they just couldn't get it together. They were good enough to be in every game, but just not good enough to take that step. The Jets don't play well traveling across the country. I mean, last year their furthest road game west was the Bengals, and they put up one of the worst performances all year. This is a game that, even though the Chargers are better than what their record shows, they're still in the midst of a quarterback change and some other changes to that team that, depending on how things are going, if you're a playoff team, you got to win this game. You're not going to the West Coast right now to play the Chiefs. You're not going at this point of the season to go play the Seahawks. I say at this point for a reason. This is a game that you need to circle and say we can't let the Chargers beat us, especially if it's a rookie quarterback in Justin Herbert. Herbert might come on strong, but still a rookie, and it's still a Greg Williams defense. And 10 times out of 10, I would take Greg Williams' defense, especially with who the Jets have on the defense. If everyone's healthy and playing at their game, I would take that more times than not. So this is a game that I'm circling for the Jets that they need to get that win. Week 7, this is the second time against the Bills, like I mentioned before. Again, first half of the season, they get them out of the way, which is kind of crazy, but Jets are home. And not much more to say than I said the first time. The two teams have split for the last 3 or 4 years against each other this season series, so expect a split in my opinion. But again, especially if the Jets don't get week 1, this has to be a must win. If you get week 1, it's a division game, obviously you need to win, but understandable if the Bills get theirs too, because they're that good. Definitely a must win if they don't get it week 1. Week 8, this is another game, or one of the games that I look at the schedule and I go, all right, Jets lost this game, and just hope that they can at least keep it respectable. They will be going to Arrowhead to play the Chiefs. Chiefs didn't make any big-time moves. They took a high-risk guy in Taco Charlton, former first-round pick. So if Andy Reid can get something out of him, then their team's even more dangerous. They drafted Edwards-Helaire with the last pick in the first round, which I think just makes their offense so much better. And not so much better, because it's as good as it gets, but it just adds an extra dynamic to that offense that's actually pretty disturbing. With what Edwards-Helaire was able to do with the LSU offense, Chiefs, I guess explosive-wise, have a very similar offense to LSU. So if Edwards-Helaire can bring that type of play style to the Chiefs, it's going to be pretty dangerous. Again, I mark this as a loss for the Jets and just kind of hope that in the end they keep it close and respectable. Week 9, their first Monday night game, their only Monday night game, up against the New England Patriots. Last year, they played the Patriots at home. Sam Darnold saw ghosts. It was ugly. This year, even though Tom Brady didn't have any pretty much part in that win, there's no Tom Brady, and it's just a different feel for the Patriots. They're still the class of the AFC East, but you can't just say you remove a couple guys and say, okay, now it's the rest of the teams in the division's turn to take over. You still have to beat them. They did lose some other pieces on the defensive side, like Duron Harmon, Kyle Van Noy, Roberts. They lost pretty significant contributors to that defense, but it's still the Patriots, and Bill Belichick will just find the next Van Noy and whoever. So it's still going to be a tough game. For the Jets, win or lose, you need redemption in this game. It was embarrassing last year, especially hooking the microphone up to your quarterback and, seeing ghosts and everything on the sideline. This is a game that you got to punch back. I mean, and the NFL has granted you an opportunity to not only have it on Monday night again, but to be home again. So win or lose, you need to fight in this game. But it makes a tough back-to-back, a tough 3 games in a row, though, for the Jets. Bills, Chiefs, and then Patriots. Home for 2 of them at least, but definitely a rough stretch here. Week 10 and Week 12, the Jets will be first at Miami and then home against Miami, like I mentioned before, with that Week 11 bye, which is a bye that I love. The Week 11 bye. Later in the season, yeah, I guess you want Week 8-ish, 9-ish, but Week 11, take that break right before that final stretch of the season. If you're somewhere around 500, take that deep breath and then go. And especially going against a team like Miami, on paper, the Dolphins aren't ready to win yet. They did get Tua, and they look like a team that if they get to 7-9, 8-8, fans and probably in-house, they probably would be happy with that. But that doesn't mean that they're not competitive. Last year, they started the season very, very, very badly. They looked like one of the worst teams I've ever seen. And then Fitzpatrick took back over. Some changes were made. Trading Minkah Fitzpatrick somehow actually benefited them. But they bought into Brian Flores, and they looked like a much different team. Finished 5-11, which is actually pretty respectable considering where they were, with a big win in New England last year in a must-win game for New England. So I thought that showed a lot. This is a game, though, that if you're the Jets, both games, that if you're a playoff team, you're winning both. And I understand that sometimes splitting within the division is fine. If you split with New England and Buffalo, you can live with that. You cannot split with Miami. Miami's not ready to take the division over. They're not ready to really be a formidable playoff caliber opponent yet. And since that's the case, the Jets need to fight back. And honestly, last year the Jets could have lost both games. They squeaked by in the second one and then were embarrassed down in Miami in Gase's return. If Gase wants some redemption now, this is the year to do it. Taking them back-to-back helps. Having them back-to-back pretty much with that bye in between, definitely an advantage for the Jets, considering you go to Miami, and if you take care of business, you get that week off, and then playing them again, basically a break before you could do it all over again. That's definitely a big advantage for the Jets, being able to host that second time. Week 13, the Jets play the Raiders. Raiders came last year to the Jets, and while they were rolling, they were 6-4 at the time, the 6th seed in the playoffs. It looked like a team that could actually be a wild card team in that AFC West. We're actually just a game out at the time of the Chiefs for the division, and then they lost 34-3, I believe it was, to the Jets last year. It was just a very embarrassing game, and it showed the type of inconsistency within that team. The next week, they lost almost by 40 to the Chiefs, and then they put up, I think the third week, I forgot who they played, they lost by like 35-40 again or something crazy. The season ended up spiraling out of control, but this is a team that last year did not play well on the road. So if you're the Jets, another game that you need to circle and say it's a must win. I mean, there's no reason why you let the Raiders come in and beat you at home. So definitely a must win if you're thinking playoffs for the Jets. Week 14, the Jets, another game I probably mark as a loss in the early going. We'll be going to Seattle to play the Seahawks. In this game, I'm just looking for Sam Darnold on the offense to keep it close and make this a fight. One thing about Seattle is they're not going to blow anybody away. I think if Greg Williams and the defense shows up and can limit Russell Wilson, the offense will have a chance in this game. In a tough environment, you just don't want to see Sam forcing balls or just looking lost out there. You want to see him keep the team in the game. Even if things aren't working and they're just not executing, they're not blocking well, receivers aren't getting, whatever the case is, you want to see your quarterback in this rough environment step up and give his best. You don't want to see him throwing 2 or 3 away and one coming back for a touchdown, ultimately losing the game. You want to see them at least with a chance to win this game. And it's a game they can win. Seahawks are a very good team. Russell Wilson's a big reason why, but minus Russell Wilson, and there's a lot of holes on this roster. He masks a lot of holes. If the Jets can exploit them, they have a chance to win, but one of those games that late in the season, Seahawks are probably going to be looking for a playoff spot, or seeding-wise, probably whether it's a first seed or a bye week type seed or a wild card seed. They're going to be in the mix, so it's going to be a must-win for both teams. So this is a game that, on paper, I'll mark as a loss and just be happy that the Jets win if they do. In the next week, week 15, they stay on the West Coast, so it's going to be interesting what they do logistics-wise because they will be going to the Los Angeles Rams. Rams were disappointing last year, going 9-7. I mean, normally at 9-7, you're pretty okay with that type of record, but they missed the playoffs, just a year removed from being in the Super Bowl with a chance to win the Super Bowl. This is a team that really struggled offensively at times. They were very inconsistent. Some games they looked like the same old Rams, putting up 35-40 points. Other games that they looked like they could barely score 10. A big reason for that was they relied a lot on Todd Gurley. Gurley was not the same player. Almost 800 yards less total last year, like 7 or 8 less touchdowns, which is completely ineffective, and at times they were limiting him. They're definitely going to have to figure out that running game because Jared Goff, in my opinion, can't carry a team with his arm, especially if the running game isn't there. And you've seen Goff went under pressure, struggled with that. The defense is still very good, and Aaron Donald, even though the Jets have an overhauled offensive line, he still will get his opportunities. The Jets should make him the key point into stopping him. But the big matchup here is Greg Williams against this offense. You can't let the Rams get hot and really let them get going with what they can do. If you can limit Goff and limit this team from basically being that explosive selves that they can be, especially getting rid of the run game, and get pressure on Goff, and the Jets will be in this game. At that point, it'll be up to Sam to not turn one away, letting guys like Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald really have that much of an impact. So that's where they're going to be at in that situation. In the next game, in my opinion, this could be the biggest game of the year. the Jets will be playing home against the Cleveland Browns for the third consecutive year. Mayfield versus Darnold, probably two that are going to be linked together for a long time, good or bad, considering Darnold was looked at as the number one pick coming out of that 18 class, and it surprisingly went to Baker Mayfield to go to Cleveland. This is a game that the Jets didn't have Darnold last year, and to their credit, they were really in the game. And it looked like Greg Williams took this game personally, considering a lot of people thought he would have probably kept his job as the interim head coach to become the full-time head coach over in Cleveland, and then they ended up going with Freddie Kitchens. Williams really did a nice job considering how bad Luke Falk and Trevor Siemian played in that game. Up until the very end, the Jets had a chance to win that game. But hosting this game again, both teams could be in a situation where they're going to need the games to win. So I think the fact that this game is considered to be determined is because this is a game that could get flexed out to a primetime game, because you could be looking at 2 8-win teams at this point, possibly looking for that last playoff spot. So this is a game that I'm circling, and I'm probably going to. Again, if you're the Jets, it's as big as I made it. It's a game that I believe they can win. I just think it's a very evenly matched up game, so to pick a winner or loser now is just crazy. To do that with any team is crazy, but it's really undecided at this point. I love the matchup late in the season like this, and I love the fact that the Jets are home. Last week of the season, the Jets will be at New England. That's a tough ask. Week 17, having to go up to Foxborough for a potential playoff spot is a very tough ask. We saw last year the Dolphins were able to do it, not playing for the playoffs, but just playing for themselves. But again, this is going to be a big ask, and it caps a very difficult schedule for the Jets. It definitely caps it off in a very difficult way. Those last 3 games at the Rams, Browns, and then at New England is a very big ask. If you go through it really quickly, in my opinion, looking at this, if the Jets get those games that they're supposed to get, go and get that game against the Broncos and the Cardinals and the Chargers. Those are 3 games that, if you win those must-win games, split with the Dolphins, Raiders, split with the Bills and Patriots, you're looking at about 7 or 8 wins. And that's not including a game like the toss-up games with the Rams, the Browns. I said split with the Dolphins, but you should really win both of those games. So the Jets have an opportunity, even though with a tough schedule, to win 10 games. They do have that opportunity. Likely, I don't really think so. I'm going to assume unless something changes, obviously, during the season, as of right now, I'm not convinced that they're going to sweep any division games. So at best, they're splitting. You're looking at 3-3 there. And then if you win the games you're supposed to win, that's 7 wins. And then with a potential win against the Browns would be 8. So 7-9, 8-8 is probably about right. That's probably where I see the Jets. On paper, that's what it looks. Obviously, the season, so many different things can happen. Injuries, anything can happen. So I'll have another season prediction when the time comes. But I think as of right now, just immediate reaction from the schedule, looking at the schedule. Overall, I think it's balanced pretty well for them, and I think they got the good end of the stick despite the tough opponents, getting that Thursday night game against the Broncos and getting the Cardinals and Chargers after them. So getting a stretch of not so tough games and then just pretty much getting ready for the tough part. Then it gets easier again and then tough again. So it's a nice little way rather than tough, hard, or anything like that. So with that said, that's going to do it for this episode of Marinoni Time. Let me know in the comments if you guys agree or disagree with my assessment on what the Jets schedule should be. I'm sure some of you guys are going to say, no way, they are a 7-9, 8-8 team, whether it's in a good or bad way. Last year, I had them at their ceiling at 10-6, but I thought 9-7 or 8-8 was more likely. So them coming up at 7-9, it was close, but obviously disappointing. Probably would have hit that 8-8 or 9-7 mark had Sam Darnold not gone down with mono, but nevertheless, this is a definitely always fun to do, get going, but as it stands right now, looking at just on paper, I believe, like I said, 10-6 is possible. I think closer to 9-7 is probably the ceiling, but if I had gone ahead, I'm probably saying 8-8. We'll see, but thank you again for listening, and let me know what you guys think. Be sure to be on the lookout for my next episode, which will be covering the Giants schedule. Until then, I'll see you guys next time.